Hello, and welcome to this video where we will begin unpacking the meaning of social justice. Even before we get started, it is important to note that there is no one universal definition of social justice. Theorists and writers in the realm of justice, from John Rawls, Amartya Sen, Iris Young, Bell Hooks, Paulo Freire to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, have all spoken about social justice within their work and have situated it in several theoretical frameworks. On the other hand, civil society leaders, grassroots organizations, and communities have also practiced social justice in various ways and have foregrounded it within their work. It is this interplay of theory and practice that we are concerned with and will rely on to develop our shared understanding of social justice. According to Iris Marion Young, justice should refer not only to distribution but also to the institutional conditions that are necessary for the development and exercise of individual capacities, collective communication, as well as cooperation. But the understanding of justice remains incomplete without an understanding of injustice. Once we are able to understand injustice, we can then use that as a framework to understand what we mean by justice a little bit better. According to Iris Marion Young, injustice comprises two disabling constraints: domination and oppression. What do we mean by these terms? At a very basic level, domination refers to constraints on self determination, and oppression refers to constraints on self development. Let's unpack this a little bit further. Domination refers not to individual acts by persons, but rather to systemic phenomena that prevents people from being able to participate meaningfully, determine their own actions and agency, and make decisions that directly or indirectly affect them. Oppression, on the other hand, refers to norms, stereotypes, attitudes, and institutional policies and practices which routinely restrict access to opportunities for self development of certain individuals and of groups. This is also systemic and is not necessarily focused on the individual. Before moving on, I do have a simple reflection question for you. Now that you have a clearer understanding of domination and oppression, have you ever seen this play out in your relationships or within your community? The concepts of domination and oppression are deeply intertwined with concepts of power and privilege. To understand power and privilege, we must first understand what a social group is. A social group refers to a collective of people who share a range of physical, cultural, social, and or economic characteristics within one of the social identity categories. Social identity categories could include one's gender, their sexual orientation, their class, their caste, their physical, developmental, or psychological ability, their race, ethnicity, nationality, religion, region, age, or geographical location. Within each social identity category, some people have greater access to social power and privilege based on their membership in a social group. This group is known as the dominant social group. It holds a position of power, establishes values and norms that benefit the group, and enjoys certain privileges. The groups whose access to social power is limited or denied are called the oppressed social groups. Dominant groups are also referred to as oppressor groups, privileged groups, or the advantaged groups. Oppressed groups can be referred to as underserved or disadvantaged groups. Privilege refers to a special right, advantage, or immunity that is available to an individual and usually unearned and made available due to their social standing. Determining which groups have privilege and which ones do not is complex because many socio-cultural, historical, and generational factors operate intersectionally or work together to shape people's privileges. This affects their access to resources and opportunities across social and political realms, including work, home, as well as interpersonal relations. Now, how do we determine who has privilege and who does not? An individual can pass as privileged either passively or actively, depending on whether a member of an oppressed social group is mistaken for a member of a dominant social group or deliberately presents themselves as a member of a dominant social group. For instance, a woman leaving her hijab at home out of fear of Islamophobia, or a person with mental health issues citing physical sickness to explain away a recent absence. Other people may passively pass as a member of a dominant group because of an assumption about their identity. such as if a bisexual person was dating someone with a different identity from them, they may be assumed to be heterosexual and thus treated differently or with more acceptance. Why does it matter who has privilege and who does not? It matters because privilege allows for the exercise of power, meaning those with privilege are in a position of greater power than those without. Now that we have discussed privilege and we understand its relationship with power, it is also important to discuss what we mean by power. While power is a broad term and can have many different definitions, it can be understood as the ability of an individual or a group to decide who will or will not have access to resources and holds the ability to direct, control, or influence the behavior of other individuals or groups. It is important to recognize that power affects more than individualized personal relationships. It defines larger societal dynamics which lead to systemic exclusion and marginalization. The five expressions of power identified by Bene Klassen and Miller are: power over, which is a direct or positional form of power. As is evident from the name itself, this form of power asserts domination, force, or coercion. It is the most traditional form of power and is seen across personal and professional relationships. For example, a management officer at an IT firm conducts a firm wide meeting. They actively interrupt the newly hired interns while sharing their concerns during the meeting and completely invalidate them as important and insignificant. This is an example of the management officer exercising power over the interns. Power with. This form of power is about creating solidarity and building collective strength through mutual support systems and safety nets. It extends to reduce social conflict and promote equitable relations. Continuing the same example as earlier, if the interns come together along with the support of a few senior management staff to have their concerns addressed by the company, this could be an example of power with. Here, by lending their support to the interns, senior management staff have exercised their power with the interns to increase the power that they may have. Power 2. This concept refers to building the capacity of individuals and groups to build their own power and exercise their own agency. It recognizes our intrinsic power and opens up possibilities of joint power. For example, the senior management staff have provided insight into key strategies the interns can use to raise their grievance and have the management address them. In this way, by sharing such an insight, senior management staff have given power to the interns. Power within. This form of power relates to intrinsic power within individuals and groups. It calls on qualities and skills one may possess, like knowledge, influence, networks, and relationships, and how they can use this to assert and exercise their power. While this power exists within oneself, it can also be nurtured and built. So, continuing the example for earlier, after having been an intern for over 6 months, an intern is advised by their mentor to negotiate a traineeship offer based on their experience and knowledge received so far. This is an expression of power within, as the intern is advocating for themselves. This is an example also of the ways in which others, such as the mentor in this case, can nurture other people's power within. And finally, we have power under, which is the most complex and prevalent form of power. It attempts to understand why people who have experienced trauma, abuse, and oppression, when they gain power, often become abusive and oppressive themselves. For example, once the internship has gotten their traineeship contract in place, they themselves try to oppress and invisibilize the challenge faced by other interns at the organization. With this and the discussion around power, privilege, and what social justice is, we have come to the end of this video. As you may have realized, power has many different facets and can deeply influence the opportunities that are available to individuals and to groups. Power is dynamic and is present in every single relationship, whether that be interpersonal or otherwise. Social justice work requires that power is engaged with critically and holistically to ensure that we are not providing band-aid stopgap solutions which are not providing systemic justice to those who have been oppressed. We hope you enjoyed this video and we really look forward to seeing you in the next one.